Hello, and welcome to the Science for Sleepy, where we lie back together beneath the soft dome of curiosity, letting wonder unfold at the pace of a breath. Tonight, we find ourselves curled beside a question that glows just out of reach. Does space end? You might already feel it. How the question lingers like starlight on your skin, warm, distant, impossible. The night is thick with velvet silence. Outside, the stars blink softly, stitched into the fabric of a sky too wide for the eye to hold. If you're enjoying this quiet journey through curiosity and time, consider subscribing. There's always more to explore, gently. We'd love to know your location and time zone in the comments. Now, close your eyes and let us begin. Imagine a telescope, an old one, maybe brass and wood, forgotten in a garden where the grass grows high and slow. The air is cool. You lean toward the eyepiece. The lens hums with time. As you peer inside, the stars begin to shift, not moving, not spinning, but stretching. A galaxy drifts slowly into view, hazy, spiraled, serene. We begin by wondering, what do we mean when we ask if space ends? Ends like a wall, a curtain, a drop-off, sharp and final, or ends like a thought does, quietly fading into the next? The telescope doesn't answer. It shows more stars. Behind every galaxy, another. Behind every flicker of light, more darkness, and in the darkness, more light. Space doesn't behave like a room with boundaries. It opens, then opens again. Long ago we thought the heavens were a dome, set above the earth like a jewel in a case. People imagined a ceiling of stars, a barrier maybe, just past Saturn. But the more we looked, the more we realized space does not present its edge to us. It recedes, gently, endlessly. Imagine walking through a fog that lifts only as you step into it. That's what it's like looking into deep space. Light takes time to reach us. So when you gaze upward, you're seeing the past, 1 billion years ago, 1 billion light years away. But not the end. Even now, with our most powerful instruments, we don't see an edge. We see limits, not because space ends, but because light hasn't had time to reach us from farther away. We aren't looking at a wall, we're looking at a clock. The stars shimmer, the telescope hums. You begin to feel it, that this question, does space end, might not be a question about distance at all. It might be about understanding. Let's follow that thought a little farther. Imagine now you're drifting, not falling, not flying, just floating. There's no ground, no ceiling, no walls, just you and the hush of space. Behind you, Earth fades into a pale blue memory. Ahead, nothing. But the nothing is filled with stars. There's no direction, no compass. You reach out, but your hand touches nothing solid. Still, you move forward. The further you go, the more you realize space isn't something you can step out of. It's not an object. It's the stage on which everything plays and the fabric of the play itself. It's not like a room you leave. It's more like a dream that continues even when you try to wake. We often think in lines, beginnings, middles, and ends. But space might be different. It may have no outside. If you kept moving forever, would you ever reach a barrier? A glowing wall? A sign that reads, "This is the edge"? There's no evidence of such a thing. No wall, no end, no drop. Just the fading light of galaxies, stretching thinner the farther you gaze. Now let's imagine space is infinite. It's a hard thing to imagine. Infinity has no center, no side, no end, just continuation. You could float forever and never find where it all stops. But infinity is heavy. It weighs on the mind. So we try to shape it into something we can carry. Maybe a loop, maybe a sphere, maybe a balloon. And that's where we'll float next. But for now, just rest here, with the image of yourself as a tiny voyager, wrapped in darkness, cushioned by starlight. Around you, galaxies soft as candlelight. Beneath you, time. Above you, possibility. You're not falling. You're not alone. You're wandering, gently, and that is more than enough. The darkness around you breathes, but not with sound. It breathes with expansion, silent, slow, and steady. In every direction the stars drift apart like petals on an invisible tide, and you, weightless in the quiet, feel the motion, though it's softer than any wind. You begin to wonder, if everything is moving outward, what is it moving into? And there, the question presses again. Does space have an edge? A rim? A place where the stars can go no farther? Let's pause gently and consider how we imagine edges. We know edges on Earth. The edge of a table, the cliff above the sea, the last page of a book. We reach the end and we stop. But in space things work differently. Our instincts ask, if the universe has an edge, what's beyond it? More space? Nothing? Something else entirely? Can there be a beyond if there's nothing to exist there? These thoughts have followed humans for millennia, across desert nights, from mountain tops, through telescopes, and ink on paper. And still, no one has ever touched the edge of space. No probe has flown past it. No light has bounced from its wall. Because maybe it's not that kind of thing. Imagine holding a snow globe. Inside, little flakes drift through miniature air, bound inside a glass sphere. You might think the universe is like that. Something contained. A bubble floating in something larger. But here's the trouble. If space had an outer wall, it would imply there is a direction, outside, that we could point to. But space contains all the directions we know, left and right, forward and back, up and down. If there's a beyond, we cannot gesture toward it, not in the way we understand. And if space had an edge, it would break the symmetry. Space, as we see it, behaves the same in every direction. The laws of physics don't get weaker or stranger the farther we go. Gravity still whispers, light still bends, no evidence of a place where the rules begin to stutter and end. Still, the idea of an edge lingers. Let's imagine you could build a spaceship that accelerates forever, quietly, smoothly, peacefully. You pass the outer planets, you move past the Kuiper belt out beyond the Oort cloud, the stars begin to thin, time slows in a strange way, but space does not resist. It welcomes your journey. You fly for years, for decades, centuries even. The galaxies stretch and redden as you approach the limit of light's oldest reach. And then, nothing changes. There's no curtain, no crack, no barrier, just more space, more dark, more distance. It does not end. It simply continues, cold, quiet, and unconcerned with being grasped. So maybe the problem is not the edge itself, but how we think about it. We're used to objects with boundaries. Apples have skin, oceans have shorelines. But space might be more like a story that doesn't need a last chapter. Let's try this. Think of a circle. Trace it slowly with your finger. There's no starting point, no end. Just a smooth, looping path. Now imagine that path not on paper, but as a surface, like a sphere. In the next part, we'll float into that idea. That space, like the surface of a balloon, may have no edge at all, just a shape we haven't walked fully around yet. But for now, drift in this in-between. You're no longer looking for a wall, you're listening for a shift in meaning. The edge may not be a place you arrive at. It may be an illusion we carry from smaller things into a too large idea. So close your eyes to the distant galaxies. Let your breath be your anchor. You're not falling, you're just wandering. The stars ripple and fall away, not with force, but with patience. The silence deepens. You're still floating, far past where maps lose meaning, far beyond anything charted. And then, softly, a shape forms in your thoughts. It begins as a balloon. Imagine you're very small, so small that the surface of a balloon feels endless beneath your feet. You begin to walk. There is no edge, no corner, no stopping point. Step by step, the surface continues, curving always underfoot, never revealing a wall. You're not inside the balloon, you're walking on it. This is a metaphor whispered by cosmologists. The expanding universe as the skin of an inflating sphere. The space we know is not spreading into something else, it is simply stretching. Now picture tiny dots drawn on the balloon surface. As the balloon inflates, the dots grow farther apart. But they don't move themselves. It is the surface, the space they rest on that grows. The expansion of the universe isn't like stars flying outward through empty air. It's space itself that swells. We see galaxies receding not because they're speeding away through a larger room, but because the room itself is unfolding. The fabric stretches, every thread pulls gently, and here's the strange beauty. The balloon has no edge, not on its surface. You could walk forever and never reach a seam. You would not fall off. You'd return to where you started eventually without ever feeling a boundary. This is a model called a finite but unbounded universe. Finite because it has a measurable size. Unbounded because it has no limits in the way we expect. It curves in on itself. Now let's tilt the thought. Imagine this balloon surface is three-dimensional. Instead of walking on a balloon, you're inside space shaped like a hypersphere, a closed geometry, looped in ways we cannot fully visualize. You float forward in a straight line forever, and eventually, like a needle on a vinyl record, you return to the beginning, not by turning, but by traveling straight. But what would it mean to loop back? Would the stars appear familiar? Would time reset? Or would you pass your own light still outbound, a ghost of where you once were? There's no experiment, yet. That proves the universe is shaped this way. But the metaphor gently holds our curiosity. It also reframes the question, does space end? Perhaps not. Perhaps it curves endlessly. Perhaps we are ants on a sphere too large to detect its shape. Let's add another layer. Imagine space curving in more than one direction, like the surface of a globe, but with the freedom to bend and fold through higher dimensions, not just left or right, up or down, but through unseen axes that escape ordinary vision. In this model, the universe could be closed like a balloon, but without needing an outside. The curvature exists within itself. You cannot fall off it. You cannot peer beyond it. You can only wander within. There's something calming in that idea. Something circular. It removes the need for a wall. Instead of a barrier, you have a return. Instead of an edge, you have a loop. So, as you drift again, farther, softer, keep that balloon in mind. Not as a perfect answer, but as a whisper. A possible shape. A gentle folding. Somewhere far below you now, galaxies still drift apart. The expansion continues, but it's not into a room. It's not pressing outward against a shell. It is unfolding the only way it knows how, in every direction at once. You cannot reach the edge of this balloon. You cannot find its start, but you can float upon its surface, carried by the stretch of space itself, and you can wander without needing to arrive. You're still drifting, cradled in the wide hush of space. The stars no longer feel scattered. They feel placed, as if some vast hand had arranged them gently, each light a bead in a necklace too long to see all at once. And now, you ask a question that tickles the edge of thought. What if space loops back on itself? Not like a road that turns or a spiral that twists, but more like a mirror that reflects not your face, but your path. Imagine now, A room made of mirrors. You step inside. You see yourself repeated again and again in every direction. Each reflection smaller, more distant. You turn slowly, but the images echo endlessly, trailing out into illusion. Now imagine space is like that. Not filled with mirrors, but shaped in such a way that light itself wraps around and returns. In such a universe, if you could see far enough, you might see yourself, from behind, long ago. Not a reflection, but your own light, looping back after a journey around the cosmos. This idea lives within something called a multiply-connected universe. A universe that repeats, not because its contents duplicate, but because its geometry allows you to pass through the same space again and again, from different directions. Picture a video game world shaped like a torus, a donut. When you walk off the right edge of the screen, you reappear on the left. When you move north, you emerge from the south. The landscape repeats, not because it's copied, but because space is bent in such a way that your journey always returns you. Could our universe be shaped like this? The idea isn't fantasy. Mathematicians and physicists explore such topologies. The universe may have a shape we cannot detect at our small scale. It may close in ways our senses were never built to understand, and yet we try. Let's imagine you set out from Earth in your silent ship. You sail in a straight line, forward, always forward. If the universe is truly curved in this way, eventually you might return to your starting point without ever changing direction. But it would take eons. The path would be so vast, the loop so slow, that even light would need billions of years to complete it. You wouldn't see yourself, not as you are now. But perhaps, just perhaps, you would glimpse Earth from behind long ago. A blue dot in its youth. Your own planet, younger than memory, lit from a different angle in time. And if you waited, if you looked again, might you see the past play out in duplicate? There are no experiments yet that prove this looping. But there are studies on the patterns in cosmic microwave background light that search for matched circles, for fingerprints of a repeating space. So far, no confirmation. But the idea hums softly in the background of cosmology, not disproven, not discarded. Imagine what it would mean if it were true. There would be no edge to find, only repetition, recurrence, not in time, but in location. The end would be the beginning. You wouldn't crash into a wall. You'd come home. It changes the tone of the question. Does space end? No. It folds. It loops. It offers no exit because it contains all exits. It is the hallway without a final door. Now, drift a little farther with this idea. You're floating through a repeating cosmos. Every so often the constellations return, but shifted, rotated, seen from a different angle. There is comfort in the cycle, a kind of echo in the architecture, not déjà vu, but recognition through geometry. The loop is not a trick, it is a structure, a path that returns without ever retracing. So tonight, let that be enough. The stars above you do not end. They may return, they may reflect, but they do not stop. Let your breath match the slow arc of the loop. In, outside, again and again. You drift on, the quiet deeper now, like velvet laid over thought. The stars shimmer farther apart and time begins to feel less like a river, more like a fog, a gentle slowing. And then the horizon comes into view. Not a line, not a boundary, but a limit, a vanishing. This is not the edge of space. It's something softer. You've reached what scientists call the cosmological horizon, the farthest distance from which light has had time to reach us since the universe began expanding. It is not a wall. It is not the end. But it is, in a sense, as far as we can see. And what lies beyond that? We do not know. We cannot know. Yet. Because even light, the fastest traveller in existence, has not crossed that distance to greet us. You float toward that horizon, not to cross it, but to observe its whisper. Imagine a circle around you, vast and glowing faintly, its edge not made of matter, but of time. The light arriving there began its journey nearly 14 billion years ago, soon after the universe's first breath, and beyond that, there may be more stars, more galaxies, more space, but their light hasn't reached us, and so they remain beyond the veil. Now imagine this. The universe is still expanding, and that expansion is accelerating. Distant galaxies are moving away from us so quickly that their light will never reach Earth. Not now, not ever. There are galaxies that exist today that are already gone from our future. They are not destroyed, they are simply unreachable. Beyond the cosmological horizon lies not nothing, but something hidden, not by shadow, but by time's impatience. You may wonder, could we one day travel there? Could we catch up to those galaxies, leap past the horizon? Number. The space between is expanding faster than you could move. Even at the speed of light, you would never reach them. The universe's growth outpaces your effort. You're rowing against a current that stretches faster than oars can pull. This is the haunting beauty of cosmic expansion. The more distant something is, the faster it appears to recede. Not because it is fleeing, but because space itself is swelling. And so, the horizon is not a place we reach. It is a moving edge of the observable, a bubble that grows, but always just behind the swelling tide of the unknown. There's a softness in accepting this, a kindness in knowing we do not see everything, and perhaps never will. Not because we lack instruments, but because the universe has limits built not of stone, but of time. You float in this realization now. The galaxies closest to you still shine clearly, but beyond a certain distance their light fades, stretched into longer wavelengths, reddened by motion until it dissolves. A star's light becomes a whisper, then silence. This is called red shift. The greater the distance, the deeper the red. Eventually the red becomes infrared, then microwave, then radio, then nothing. Not because the stars are gone, but because they have moved too far, too fast for light to catch up. So perhaps space does not end, but your view of it does, like a dream you cannot remember, just out of reach, glowing at the edges of sleep. And beyond that, more of everything, more stars, more time, more questions, perhaps even answers that will never arrive. You rest now near that horizon. You do not knock, you do not cross. You simply watch the darkness deepen, aware that it holds more than light. It holds mystery, and there is peace in that. The darkness here is ancient, not empty, but filled with something quiet and warm. It glows, not with stars, but with memory. You've drifted into the oldest light in the universe, a soft sea of radiation that surrounds everything, steady and low, humming in every direction. This is the cosmic microwave background, the CMB. A name too technical for something so gentle. Think of it as the afterglow of creation. Roughly 13.8 billion years ago, the universe was dense and hot beyond imagining. A storm of particles and light, all tangled together, bouncing and scattering in chaos. But eventually, slowly, steadily, it cooled. And when it cooled enough, light was finally free to travel. That light has been travelling ever since. It fills space completely. You're floating in it now, though you can't see it with your eyes. It is too faint, too stretched, too soft. But it is there, everywhere. Let's imagine you could see it. not with ordinary sight, but with new eyes tuned to the right frequency. The sky would glow faintly in every direction. No matter where you looked, the pattern would be nearly the same. A warm, dappled fog of microwaves stretched by time whispered through the fabric of space. It is not light from stars. It is older than any star. It is not light from galaxies. It came long before. This light is from a moment called recombination, when the universe was just 380,000 years old. A blink compared to now. In that moment, atoms formed for the first time, and the universe became transparent. Light could finally travel freely, unscattered, and it has been travelling ever since. Imagine that. You're held in the arms of a light that began its journey before there were planets, before there was dust, before even time had found its rhythm. It is the oldest picture of the universe we can take. But the picture is not smooth. It is speckled. Tiny fluctuations in temperature, small differences in density. And in those small differences, all of us were seeded. Those ancient wrinkles became galaxies, became stars, became planets, became oceans and trees and breath. They became thought. From these tiny ripples in the early light, all structure emerged. So when you float here, inside this glow, you're not far from home. You're wrapped in the earliest evidence of becoming. Now imagine this light as a boundary, not of space, but of time. Beyond the cosmic microwave background, the universe was still too opaque to see. The light could not travel freely. We cannot look farther, not with light. Not yet. Beyond that veil, we enter a darkness not of absence, but of mystery. We call this barrier the surface of last scattering, the place where photons last bounced before setting off across the cosmos. So in a way, this is the farthest wall we can see, but it is not a wall of space, it is a wall of history. And even here, there is no finality. There are theories, whispers really, that one day we may peer beyond it, not with light, but with neutrinos, or gravitational waves, other messengers, more elusive than photons, able to slip through those early fogs. But for now, we rest here, in this quiet cradle of the cosmic background, in the faint universal hush that holds the story of before. You're not alone in this light. Everywhere it falls, it carries memory, and that memory includes you, not in your shape, not in your name, but in your presence, in your curiosity. You are part of the unfolding, so close your eyes here. Let the warmth of ancient light settle over you like a soft blanket. You have travelled far. You've looked back across time and ahead. The darkness continues, but it is not silent. It is humming, and it is full. You float on, deeper now, as if gliding along the threads of an invisible tapestry. The starlight has faded to a shimmer, and the soft murmur of the cosmic background fades behind you. There is nothing solid here, no planets, no fire, only the vast, shadowy silence between. And even in this silence, a question unfolds. Could space have seams? Could it hide cracks? Tonight we wonder about the topology of the cosmos, the deep hidden shape of space itself, not its size, not its speed, its shape. And we ask, is it smooth and infinite like a plane, curved like a sphere, twisted like a Mobius strip, or something stranger, stitched together from loops and folds, like a piece of fabric wrinkled in dimensions we cannot see? Imagine standing inside a room with mirrored walls. As you turn, you see endless copy of yourself, reflections that seem to go on forever. But the room is finite. Its repetition is not due to size, but due to shape. Now imagine space is like that room. It appears endless, but it is actually repeating, perhaps so subtly that the pattern evades our senses entirely. This is not science fiction. Cosmologists explore whether the universe has a multiply-connected topology, a geometry where space wraps back on itself in complex ways, not just like a balloon or a donut, but like a series of tunnels and loops, creating illusions of distance. If this were true, you could, at least in theory, travel far enough in one direction and eventually return to your starting point. Not by turning, but by continuing forward, over and over again. But the real strangeness begins when we ask, what if the seams don't just loop? What if they fold? Let's drift into that. Think of a sheet of paper, flat, simple. Now fold it, once, twice, again. Suddenly, 2 points that were distant are touching. In geometry, this is called non-Euclidean space. The rules of straight lines and parallel edges no longer apply. The space curves. Shortcuts emerge. Could the universe be folded like that? Could distant galaxies be closer than they appear? Not through ordinary space, but through a hidden fold. We don't see these folds directly, but we search for them, through patterns in the cosmic microwave background, through repeated structures in the arrangement of galaxies, through whispers in the motion of stars. So far, the universe looks flat on large scales, smooth, unwrinkled. But that doesn't prove it is infinite. It could still be curved in ways too vast, too slow, too gentle for us to detect with today's tools. Like a shallow bowl that stretches across the whole of existence. And if the universe does have seams, they are not places we could tear through. They are not rips, they are shapes, silent, invisible, fundamental. Just like the seams in a well-sewn garment, they are meant to be part of the structure, not flaws in it. There is an elegance to this. You might be drifting now through space that is folded back upon itself. You might pass the same point twice and never know it. You might be inside a space that isn't endless, but simply without end. A quiet distinction, one that matters deeply. So you float through this idea, past stars you may have seen before, past galaxies whose light may have circled the universe once already. Past the possibility that what seems scattered may, in truth, be one repeated pattern. You're not lost. You're inside a shape too vast for your eyes, and that shape may hold all of space, neatly wrapped, elegantly curved, seamless and complete. There is no crack here, only form, only structure, only the soft architecture of what is. So rest now. Let the thought hold you. You're inside a design. You do not need to see its edges, you only need to feel its curve. You're drifting still, but the stars feel softer now, like dust in twilight, barely brushing against your senses. And then a door opens, not in front of you, but within thought itself. A question enters like mist. Could space be more than we see? Could it hide dimensions curled too tightly to unfold? Tonight we explore what lies beneath perception. Imagine a thread. To the human eye it's a line, thin, smooth, one-dimensional. But zoom in, far beyond ordinary sight, and you find fibres twisting together. Go closer still, and perhaps you find threads within those threads, spiralling tighter, curled in on themselves. What if space is like that? Not flat, not even curved in a familiar sense, but folded. Not in 3 dimensions, but in more, extra dimensions, compact and hidden, like the threads of a thread, unnoticed but fundamental. This is the world imagined by string theory, a mathematical framework where space is not just 3 dimensions wide and 1 dimension long in time, but potentially 10 or 11 dimensions deep. Where are those other dimensions? They're not far away. They are here, right here, curled up at every point in space, too small to see, like invisible petals folded into the shape of reality. Picture an ant walking on a tightrope. To the ant, the rope is one-dimensional, forward or back. But if you're small enough, you could walk around the rope. That extra direction exists, but only to those who can access it. We may be like that ant. To us, space feels like forward-back, up-down, side to side. But just beyond our reach, there may be other directions, tightly curled, vibrational, woven into every point in the cosmos, and they may explain much of what we do not understand. Why gravity is so weak, why particles behave like waves, why time flows as it does. In this view, the end of space may not be out there, but around us, folded inward. The universe may not need to be infinite to avoid edges. It may simply be dimensional in ways we cannot enter. Let's drift deeper. Imagine now that you can shrink, not just in size, but in dimensional perception. You shrink past atoms, past quarks, past the vibrational strings that, in this model, form the heart of all matter. You find yourself in a space with 6 extra directions. Each one loops, each one bends, each one wraps into itself like a garden of invisible paths. This place is not a location. It is a condition of existence. You cannot walk to it. You are already inside it. We cannot see these dimensions, not because they are far, but because they are tight. They do not sprawl. They do not stretch. They curl in. And they may be the reason the universe behaves as it does. If so, then what we call space is a projection, a shadow cast from a deeper shape. What we call edges may not exist at all, because beyond the visible world, the world continues inward. Not away, not outward, but folded, secret, silent. The universe may end in the same way a song ends, not with silence, but with echoes you can no longer hear. Or perhaps it does not end at all. It simply deepens. So let go now of flatness. Let go of lines. Float within the idea that space is not thin. It is layered. And you are drifting through those layers, one breath at a time. The space around you is utterly still. No wind, no current, no weight. But in that stillness there is movement. Not in the stars, not in the galaxies, but in the very fabric of emptiness itself. You drift into what looks like nothing, and find that it is full. Tonight, we enter the vacuum, and we learn it is not empty. We often think of space as absence, the place between things, a void, a vacuum. But that's not quite true. The vacuum is alive, not with stars, not with sound, but with flickers, pulses, a restless dance too fast to follow. Welcome to quantum space, the deepest quiet, where even nothing hums. Imagine standing in a room with no air, no particles, no light. To your senses, it is still. But if you could see with quantum eyes, the room would shimmer with activity, particles blinking into existence, then vanishing, fluctuations bubbling from nowhere, a sea of possibility. This is what physicists call quantum vacuum fluctuations. Space, even when stripped of all matter and heat, still seethes. The uncertainty built into the universe means that energy cannot stay perfectly still. There is always movement, tiny, fleeting, spontaneous. And these aren't metaphors. These fluctuations are real. They have effects we can measure. They create pressure. They affect the behavior of atoms. They even help explain why the universe exists at all. Because from these quantum jitters, things can emerge. Particles, fields, even perhaps entire universes. Let's sit with that. What we call nothing is actually the most fertile something, a bed of trembling probabilities, a place where existence is constantly considering itself, trying on forms, folding and unfolding. Imagine a flat pond in perfect darkness. You hover above it. It looks still. But beneath the surface, the water shifts, invisible ripples born from internal tension. No pebble is dropped. No wind disturbs it. The pond moves anyway, because it must. That is the vacuum, and you're floating through it now. Every inch of the cosmos is filled with this invisible dance. From here to the edge of the observable universe and beyond, the vacuum hums. It's not noise, it's the quiet heartbeat of reality itself. Now, consider this. Some theories suggest that space itself, the thing we move through, may have emerged from these fluctuations. That before space, before time, there was quantum uncertainty, a restlessness so profound it created dimensions just to stretch in. So what does this mean for the question we carry? Does space end? Maybe space was never a static container. Maybe it is the visible surface of a deeper probabilistic process. And maybe what lies beyond space isn't a wall or a void, but a more intense kind of potential, a waiting. It also raises another question, one that will return later. Could space come and go? Could it blink into being and blink out again? For now, just rest in the paradox. That emptiness is full, that the vacuum is never quiet, that, even where there is nothing, something always stirs. Let the stillness around you hum with unseen rhythm. You're not floating in absence, you're gliding across the skin of pure possibility, and it carries you, gently, endlessly. You're floating now between stars no longer visible, beyond galaxies whose light has been stretched too far to shine. Around you is the quiet presence of space itself, still expanding, still deepening. And somewhere in that hush, a strange idea rises. What if this isn't the only space? Tonight you drift toward the possibility of other universes, a multiverse, not a science fiction fantasy, but a serious whispered consideration among physicists and philosophers alike. Let's begin gently. Imagine a field, not a field of grass, but of energy, smooth, wide, and ancient. The kind of field that might stretch beyond the horizon of everything. This is the inflationary field, a concept born from our effort to explain how the universe expanded so evenly, so rapidly just after the Big Bang. According to this idea, space underwent a burst of inflation, growing faster than light for a tiny fraction of a second. And when that inflation ended, our universe as we know it, its galaxies, its laws of physics, its time, began to take shape. But what if the inflation didn't stop everywhere? What if it continued in other regions? You can picture it like boiling water. Bubbles form, rise, pop, each one expanding its own little world. These bubbles don't all pop at once. Some grow, some split, some drift far from each other, never to meet. Now, imagine each bubble is a universe. One of them is ours, and the rest? Different. Each with its own version of physics, a different balance of matter, gravity, or light. In some, stars may never form. In others, time may curl instead of stretch. Most may be inhospitable. But a few, just a few, might bloom. This is the multiverse, a cosmos filled with universes, a collection of bubbles all forming within the greater inflating field. Infinite, or nearly so. And if that's true, then space does not end. It gives way. Not to a boundary, but to transition. Your universe may not be the only story being told. It may be one book in a library too vast to walk across. Let's drift even deeper. What lies between these bubbles? Is there space between universes? Perhaps not space as we know it. Perhaps something stranger. A kind of pre-space. A condition from which space itself can emerge, a tension, a waiting. And what separates one universe from another? Not walls, not fences, but the laws themselves, the constants, the rules, each bubble sealed in its own nature, unreachable from the others, mostly, because some theories suggest the bubbles may collide. that universes may bump into each other, leaving scars in the cosmic background, patterns we could in theory detect. So far we've found no such scars, but the possibility remains, and with it, the question: are we alone in the multiverse? We may never know. The other bubbles may be too far, their light forever trapped in their own expansion. We cannot see them, we cannot touch them, but we can wonder, and that wonder itself is a form of arrival. So now, float in this idea that space may not end because space may not be singular, that what we think of as everything may be one small region in a far larger unobservable sea, not empty, not silent, but richly folded with possibilities we will never meet, and that too is beautiful. You are here, inside one bubble. It is enough. But the sky beyond your sky may be endless in a very different way. The quiet continues, but something has changed. You begin to feel not just the stretch of space, but the pull of time. It moves differently here, slower, thinner, almost hesitant. You drift into a place where the questions shift. What if space doesn't end because it's not separate from time? What if the shape of space is written by the flow of time itself? Tonight, we lie gently beside the idea of space-time. That space and time are not two things, but one. Let's begin with a ripple. You drop a pebble into a still pond. The surface curves. The water changes shape. Now imagine a planet, a star, or a black hole in the fabric of the universe. The mass curves space, not just around itself, but through time. This is what Einstein gave us with his theory of general relativity, a new vision of space, where mass tells space-time how to curve, and curved space-time tells matter how to move. There are no fixed backgrounds here. Space is not the stage, it is part of the play. You float now not through a passive vacuum, but through a medium that bends, twists and folds under the weight of everything it contains. Every object, planet, star, galaxy, creates a dimple in the space-time around it. The more massive, the deeper the curve. Black holes, those heavy silences, bend the fabric so sharply that not even light can escape. But even more strangely, time slows in those curves, not metaphorically, literally. A clock near a massive object ticks more slowly than one far away. A second near a black hole stretches longer. Time is elastic, and its flow is shaped by space. So what does this mean for our quiet question? Does space end? It means we cannot think of space without thinking of time. The two are interwoven, one thread, not two. Imagine drawing a map, flat and wide, showing hills and oceans, roads and forests. Now add elevation, add temperature, add motion. Suddenly, the map becomes a four-dimensional landscape, shaped not only by where things are, but by when they are. Space, in this sense, is not fixed. It evolves, it stretches, it flows. And the edges of space may simply be places where time cannot reach. Think of the event horizon of a black hole. Not a wall, not a surface, but a boundary in time. If you cross it, you don't crash into anything, but your timeline diverges. Outside observers see you slow to a crawl. To them, you never truly pass through. From your view, you fall gently inward. No wall, just a limit. An irreversible fork in the river of time. Now consider the edge of the observable universe. We spoke of it earlier, the cosmological horizon. That too is a time horizon. Beyond it, the light hasn't reached us. Beyond it, time simply hasn't had enough time. So the structure of the universe is not only spatial, it is temporal. The shape of the cosmos is shaped by its past, and its future, it will shape the curve of tomorrow. You drift now in a current of time stretched thin by distance. Every second is longer than the one before. You're moving not just through space, but through a living shape, a constantly adapting geometry where location and duration entwine. The deeper truth is this: space doesn't merely expand. Space-time unfolds, it flows, it bends, it listens to mass, it answers with shape. So maybe the end of space isn't a place we reach. Maybe it's a moment we cannot enter, a time that recedes forever, a boundary drawn not in stars but in seconds. You float in that idea now, still, quiet, drifting across the moving skin of everything. And all around you the curve continues. The darkness seems to pulse now, not with light, but with possibility. You drift in the in-between, where stars feel distant and time feels deep. And then something stirs at the edge of thought. What if space isn't something you cross? What if it folds back, not into itself, but into somewhere else? Tonight we approach the idea of wormholes, bridges, tunnels, shortcuts through space-time. The whispered possibility that the universe, so vast and patient, may also be secretly efficient, capable of linking far corners in a single breath. Let's begin with a sheet of paper. You draw 2 dots, far apart. Measured in ink, they're distant. But now fold the paper, crease it just right, so the dots meet. The distance is not erased, it's bypassed. This is the dream of the wormhole, a tunnel through space-time connecting distant regions of the universe, or perhaps even different universes entirely. A passage through the hidden dimension of geometry. The equations of general relativity allow them, not easily, not stably. But they emerge in the math like shy creatures, delicate and strange. The first formal wormhole appeared as the Einstein-Rosen bridge, a theoretical connection between 2 black holes. Not a usable tunnel, not a path to travel, but a suggestion, a structure. Later, thinkers like Kip Thorne imagined a more practical form, traversable wormholes, still theoretical, still unobserved, but mathematically possible if exotic matter with negative energy density could hold the tunnel open, preventing collapse. Let's imagine it's real. You're floating near one now. From the outside, it might look like a sphere of darkness, or like a mirror rippling slightly. Not a door, not a tear, just a shimmer in space, subtle as breath on glass. You drift closer. As you pass through, space bends, not sharply, not painfully, but as though turning inside out. For a moment, direction becomes meaningless. Up folds into forward, distance flattens, and then, gently, you emerge somewhere else, across the galaxy, across the universe, across time. No one knows for certain, because no wormhole has been observed, and even if one existed, we do not yet have the means to use it. The energy required, the stability needed, it's all beyond us for now. But still, the idea lives, and it changes the nature of the question. Does space end? Because if wormholes are possible, then space isn't merely connected. It's multiply connected. Not like threads in a weave, but like tunnels in a mountain. There is no edge. There is only passage. Some physicists wonder if black holes themselves might be entrances. That behind the event horizon, a tunnel opens, not to destruction, but to somewhere else. Not all agree, but the possibility lingers. Even in quantum theory, echoes of wormhole-like behavior appear, in entanglement, in the strange communication between particles across distance, faster than light, as if space doesn't apply. Could space be an illusion? Could it be a surface draped over deeper linkages? And if so, what does ending mean? Perhaps space doesn't end. Perhaps it just folds into other meanings, other destinations, other continuities. You float now, not looking for doors, but sensing that they may already surround you. unseen, unfelt, but written into the deep geometry of existence. If space has no edge, perhaps it has gateways, and you're already near one. You're farther now than ever before, past the known, past the visible, past even the softly rippling metaphors of wormholes and folds. Here, the quiet is different. Not a lack of sound, but a lack of certainty. And from this stillness, another question begins to rise. What lies beyond the reach of physics? Tonight, we drift gently into the sky beyond equations. For all its elegance, science does not claim to know everything. It does not say, this is all there is. It says only, this is all we can measure. So far. So what lies beyond? You're floating now on the very edge of knowability, where mathematics continues but observation cannot follow. A place where theory becomes whisper, and whisper becomes wonder. Let's begin with a paradox. Some models of the universe suggest that space is infinite. Others suggest it is finite but without boundary. Both possibilities fit the data we see. Both make predictions that match observations, but they imply different kinds of reality. Infinite space means infinite stars, infinite galaxies, infinite versions of you. Reading these words under slightly different skies, it means everything that can happen must happen somewhere. Finite space, curved and self-contained, suggests a grand, closed structure, neat, whole, woven. But we do not know which is true. We have models, equations, geometry, but no experiment can yet distinguish between them with certainty. And then, beyond those models, other possibilities emerge. Mathematical universes that behave in ways we cannot imagine. Spaces with more than 4 dimensions, curled, spiked, or infinite in bizarre directions. Structures that contain no matter at all, just pure geometry. Spaces where time behaves differently, or doesn't exist at all. The laws of physics, as we understand them, may be just one set of rules in a vast mathematical landscape. Like one game played among countless others, each governed by its own logic, its own constants, its own tempo. These other systems may be unobservable from within our own, but they may still exist. Think of a violin string. Pluck it gently and it sings. Change the tension, the length, the material, and it sings something else. The laws of physics are like that, resonances in a deeper structure. Our universe plays one song, others might play different ones. In some theories, like mathematical Platonism, these universes are not mere ideas. They're as real as ours, just unreachable, unshaped by energy, unlit by observation. So space may not have an end in the physical sense. It may simply fade into abstraction, not darkness, not silence, but a region where concepts stop being touchable and become only thinkable. You drift here now, not lost but suspended. You feel the gentle pull of logic, of pattern, but there are no stars here, no dust, no light, only possibility, folded quietly. And still, the question echoes. Where does space end? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it opens, like a flower, into something that can never be seen, only imagined. Maybe this is the sky beyond physics, the place where math keeps dreaming, long after measurement sleeps. And maybe, in this dreaming, lies a kind of answer. Not a final truth, but a gentle acceptance that knowing has a boundary too, and just past it. Wonder continues. You drift now through a silence so complete it feels thick, like velvet drawn across thought. Behind you, the stars. Around you, abstraction. And within you, a growing realization that space may not be defined by coordinates or edges, but by feeling. What does it mean to be inside something infinite? Tonight, you lie softly beneath the emotional gravity of infinity. Infinity is a hard word. Cold, metallic, precise, yet the experience of it, when truly felt, is warm, strange, and vast in a way that mathematics cannot contain. You begin to sense it now, not as a number but as a weight. Infinity does not shout, it whispers without stopping, and that whisper can overwhelm, because the mind was built for limits. We count, we measure, we point. Infinity resists all three. So we try to understand it through metaphor, a line with no end, a sky with no edge, a mirror that reflects a mirror that reflects a mirror. But none of these capture the full experience of infinity, because infinity is not just endlessness, it is unbounded fullness. It is not the hallway that never ends. It is the moment when you realize you're already surrounded. Imagine standing in a forest where every tree leads to more trees. No edge, no clearing, just trees forever, rustling gently. You begin to lose track, not just of your path, but of the need for a path. There is no center, no perimeter, just pattern. Space might be like that, and your place within it, not special, not marginal, but entirely within. You're not near the middle or near the edge, you are in it, as much as anything else ever could be. Infinity humbles us, but it also comforts, because in something truly infinite, nothing is left out. Everything belongs. There is no border to exclude you, no corner to reach, no height too high or depth too deep. You're inside the whole. Even now, this can be unsettling at first, to live in a universe that may not end, not in direction, not in depth, not in meaning. It makes your place feel smaller, but over time, the feeling shifts. Your smallness becomes part of something greater. You begin to sense the truth that infinity doesn't dwarf you. It holds you, completely and gently, because nothing is outside, everything is within, including you. Now think again about the question, does space end? Infinity says it never had to. It doesn't begin, it doesn't conclude, it simply is. A structure too large for the eye but not too large for the heart. You breathe in and feel no limit. You breathe out and find yourself still inside, not because you have not moved, but because there is nowhere to fall away. You float, not lost, not tiny, but held. Infinity does not judge scale. It only continues, and as you rest here, inside this idea, you are part of that continuation. A soft thought drifting in a vastness that never closes. A whisper inside the whisper of forever. You float now not through space but through thought. The stars are behind you, invisible but still pulsing in memory. The silence is deeper than before, closer to stillness than to quiet. And from this calm arises another kind of edge. What if the boundary isn't out there? What if it's inside us, at the edge of imagination itself? Tonight you drift toward the limits of thought. We have wandered far, through galaxies and wormholes, loops and light, through infinities and bubbling multiverses. But now we ask, how far can the mind itself travel? When we speak of the end of space, perhaps we're also speaking of the edge of comprehension, because every question we've asked, every shape we've imagined, has passed through the narrow door of human cognition. We picture balloons, mirrors, tunnels, threads, fields, not because space is those things, but because we are shaped to think that way. Our minds evolved to navigate forests and rivers, to build homes and stories, not to grasp 11-dimensional geometry or infinite continuity. So we translate the unseeable into images. We use metaphor as a kind of mental spacecraft, capable of reaching places our instruments cannot. But metaphors too have boundaries. We cannot picture the entirety of space. We cannot truly imagine something with no end, no beginning, and no outside. We can say it. We can point toward it. but we cannot hold it all in our heads at once, and yet we try. That effort, the stretch of thought towards something too large, is a kind of wonder. It's like standing in a dark cathedral and knowing the ceiling arches far beyond your vision. You cannot see the structure, but you feel it. There is awe in that not knowing. The philosopher Immanuel Kant once spoke of the sublime, not the beautiful, but the overwhelming. That moment when you encounter something too vast for your understanding. The sea, the sky, eternity, space. And in that moment, something paradoxical happens. You feel small, yes, but you also feel expanded. Because to even know that something is beyond your reach is to have already touched it. We cannot picture the full shape of the universe, but we know it may be there. We cannot hold infinity in our minds, but we can feel the tension at the border where thought bends. In that bending we find not failure, but proof of something beautiful. The edge of understanding is not a wall, it is a bridge. It invites us to keep crossing, and in that act of reaching, wondering, imagining, we participate in space itself, not physically, but creatively. We make models, we test boundaries, we reshape the question, and though we may never fully answer it, we carry the answer forward, like a candle in a long hallway, illuminating only a few steps ahead, but always moving. So tonight, as you float in this stillness, rest in the idea that your mind is part of the universe's shape, not separate, not outside, but one more loop in the pattern. There may be no edge out there, but there is a frontier within, and you are standing quietly at its edge, listening, reaching, becoming. You are deep within it now, the gentle heart of the cosmos. The stars are too distant to speak, the questions too wide to echo. But something glows faintly near the edge of thought. What happens at the boundary of light itself? What lies beyond the last flicker, the last flame, the last star? Tonight, you follow a cold star's last light. Imagine a star, old and slow, pulsing gently at the edge of the visible universe. It's not large, not burning bright anymore. It barely shines. Its light is thin, stretched by time, weakened by distance, blurred by the vast expansion between it and everything else. It was born billions of years ago, before Earth had oceans, before time had shaped the galaxies into spirals and clusters, and now it is dying, folding gently inward, leaving behind only a ghost glow, a final signal cast across space. You watch its light arrive. The photons that touch you tonight began their journey before the mountains on Earth had risen. They passed through silent voids, past growing galaxies, beyond entire clusters that have since changed shape, collided, or faded. And here they are, faint, red-shifted, trembling at the edge of visibility. This is what it means to look far in space. You look far in time. This dying star's glow is not just dim, it is ancient. You're not witnessing its last breath. You're witnessing a moment that passed long before your own story began. And what lies beyond that? Light that never reaches us. Beyond this star is space still expanding, growing so quickly that its light will never arrive. Not in a year, not in a billion, not ever. There are stars, entire galaxies even, that no longer belong to our future. They still exist, but they are lost behind the accelerating edge of the universe's expansion. Their light is frozen in flight, and one day, even this dying star you now see will fall into silence. Its light will be gone, not because the star stops existing, but because the space between it and us has stretched too far for even light to bridge. This is not a wall. It is a soft ending, not a boundary in space, but in signal. The universe is not turning off its lights. The lights are simply moving away too fast for their glow to ever find us again. and the end is not sudden, it is gradual, tender. First, the bright galaxies disappear, then the distant ones, then only the faintest stars remain, like embers, and then darkness. But even darkness isn't empty. It is rich with presence, full of what was, full of what could be. And somewhere beyond the reach of this last star, other lights may still shine, for themselves, for each other, for no one at all. You float now in that awareness that not all things are meant for observation. Some things simply are, not for discovery, not for explanation, but for existence. And that may be the most mysterious thing of all. So rest now in the final flicker. Let the light brush past your mind like a memory too soft to speak. Let the darkness gather around you, not to hide you, but to cradle you. This is not the end of space. This is just a moment when light falls quiet. You are beyond light now, beyond even the memory of it. There are no stars here, no echo of warmth, only the softest hush and a new question whispered from deep within that quiet. If no one can go farther, can anything know what's still beyond? Tonight, you drift through the idea of echoes where we cannot go. This is not about travelling anymore. You're no longer trying to reach a boundary. That idea has softened, faded like a wave pulling back into the ocean. Instead, you begin to wonder, can we send something farther than we can follow? You imagine a signal, a whisper carried by light or radio wave. You send it outward, past the planets, beyond the stars, through the dust and silence. It travels straight, unbending, unstopping. It moves toward the edge of the observable, and then farther. You won't follow it, but still, you send it. And that act becomes something more than curiosity. It becomes hope. Not the hope that something will answer, but the quiet hope that the signal will continue, even if you cannot. Imagine a message, one bit of information, simple, honest. We were here, that's all. You encode it in light, you point it outward, and you let it go. The universe may never respond, but still, it listens. Because silence does not always mean absence. Sometimes silence means distance. Sometimes silence means time. And sometimes silence is the echo of something on the way back. You float now among the remnants of human effort, probes, pulses, fragments of language and math sent into space. Voyager 1, still calling faintly from beyond the solar system, carrying its golden record, a small, impossible message to whomever or whatever might someday find it. We launch these messages not just into space, but into possibility. Even as we understand that the expanding universe means most of what exists will forever remain out of reach. Our voices are not designed to arrive, they are designed to go. This brings you to the edge of another kind of understanding, that maybe the end of space is not a place, but a conversation never returned, and maybe that's enough. Because the message still exists, it still travels. Like a bottle in a vast ocean, drifting without direction, yet somehow with purpose. Now picture this. Far beyond, at the edge of all known light, a particle of your signal brushes the dust of a galaxy you will never see. It is absorbed, or it is reflected, or maybe, somewhere unguessable, it is received. You will never know. But the act still matters. It says, we looked up. It says, we asked. It says, we tried. And so space may not end, not with silence, but with continuation without confirmation. There is something peaceful in this, not the loneliness of being unheard, but the serenity of having sent something, honest, fragile, luminous, into the vastness. So tonight, as you rest here, let yourself imagine your own message. It can be small, it can be private. You don't need a telescope, only breath, only thought, only a soft, silent offering to the unknown. It will go farther than you ever could, because distance, like space, has no edge, only deeper and deeper forms of letting go. The stillness around you now is complete, not silent, but resolved. The stars are memories, the galaxies a distant tide. You've passed through curves, tunnels, questions and echoes, and now there is no more to search for. Just one last question remains, hanging like breath in the dark. What if space does not end? Because it doesn't need to. Tonight, we dissolve into the gentle idea of no end. All through this journey, we've chased the possibility of an edge, a border, a final moment, some closure to the openness. But what if the universe isn't missing an ending? What if it simply doesn't require one? We like conclusions. We're drawn to arcs, stories, lines that curve towards silence. But nature doesn't share that structure. It doesn't stop when we do. It doesn't fold itself for our understanding. It simply is. Consider the ocean. You can sail it for days and never find its edge, but that doesn't make it unfinished. It makes it whole. It makes it open. Or consider a breath. You inhale, you exhale. It ends, yes, but not finally. It ends only to begin again. Space may be like that. Not a hallway with a wall at the end, but a horizon that always moves, slowly, gently, infinitely outward. You're floating now in that kind of space, a place that doesn't need a boundary to be real, a place whose truth lies not in how it ends, but in how it continues. And it does continue, in every direction, in every moment, with every expanding beat of cosmic time. We may never map it completely, we may never reach its farthest corner, if it even has one, but we are within it, and that quietly is the answer. You do not need to reach the edge of space to understand it. You only need to feel that you're part of it, and you are. Your body, your thoughts, your questions, all of them made from stars, from light, from fields too deep to name. You're not beside the universe, you're inside it, as natural as gravity, as silent as a wave of starlight, and as ongoing as the universe itself. So now, let go of the edge, let go of the ending, float in the softness of that last unneeded question. Space doesn't end, it becomes, and so do you. The journey is complete, the stars have quieted, the questions have softened, and now only breath remains. Breathe in, gently. Breathe out, slower still. You're weightless, not just in body but in thought. The vastness no longer presses, it supports, it holds, like water around a drifting leaf. There's no edge to worry over now, no border to locate. There's only the soft certainty of presence. You're not outside of anything. You're not reaching. You're not falling. You are being. Let your breath align with the rhythm of the cosmos, steady, slow, like the curve of orbit, like the turn of unseen galaxies. Feel your mind loosen, not with confusion, but with peace. No more directions, no more measuring, only rest. The questions will still be there tomorrow, but tonight, let them dissolve like starlight in dawn mist. Let the silence be your blanket, and the endlessness your cradle. You're floating in the middle of something that has no center. You're surrounded by a softness that never stops, and you are safe. Breathe in, breathe out, lighter, longer. There's no need to hold on now. You're already home.